I am, he is, we are. Why does the verb to be changes so often? I go, you go, but she goes. Why do we add endings s, es, and ies when we talk about the third person of singular form, he, she, and it? Why in English do verbs like walk, walked only change endings in the past, but eat, ate change completely? Yet put and put don't change at all. Let's break it down. Guys, my name is Serhi, and on this channel I help people learn English easily. First of all, let's remember what a verb is. In English, just like it might be in your native language, a verb is a part of speech that expresses action or a state of being. Therefore, the first thing to understand is that in English there are two main types of verbs: state verbs, such as to be, and all its derivatives: am, is, are, was, were. Words that indicate the state in which the subject, which is a noun, was, is, or will be. By the way, we talked in detail about what a noun is in English in this video, and action verbs like run, read, eat, swim, which indicate the action that the subject was, is, or will be performing. For example, I am a man, my state is a man. I am cold, my state is cold. As we can see, the way of thinking that forms these sentences might differ from what you've used to. Because in English, the main accents are on conveying the state in which the subject was, is, or will be, and the actions that subject was, is, or will be performing. For example, I run. I do an action of running. We eat. We do an action of eating. You swim. You do an action of swimming. He jumps. He does an action of jumping. As we see, verbs in English, like nouns, do not change according to gender, number, or case, but only change their ending in declarative sentences for the third person of singular form: he, she, it. Now, we need to be very attentive, since these endings, s, es, and ies, are the same as for nouns and have the same patterns as nouns. We must not confuse verbs with nouns by their endings in a sentence. Back in my school, we memorized and wrote down nouns with articles a and and verbs with the particle to. So if a and an indicate quantity, it's always one. Then the particle to before the verb is like a shorthand for to do. So we have to run as a verb and a run as a noun. This is just an example for you to understand the difference, not a direct rule. So, if a verb ends with the letter Y and there is no vowel before the letter Y, we add es, replacing the Y at the end of the word with an I. That is, we have IES instead of Y, as in the word cry, cry cries, or copy, copy copies. If there is a vowel, it's simply S, play, plays. If a noun ends with a hissing sound, s, x, z, sh, sh, that means letters S, SS, X, Z, SH, CH, TCH, and the letter O, then we add ES. For example, pass, passes, wash, washes, fix, fixes, do, does, and so on. In all other cases, we simply add the letter S. So we have I go, but she goes. You wash, she washes. They do, it does. Do, does. Pay attention to this word and remember it. Engrave it in your memory. as it is one of the most important words that you need to always pay attention to. Let's take a look at this table again. As we already know, in English, there are two main types of verbs: verbs of state and verbs of action. So, when we want to talk about any state of the subject, we will always use to be and its corresponding form. I am tall. My state is tall. You are beautiful. Your state is beautiful. He is Tom. His state is Tom. And what do we do with action verbs? Before talking about that, let's consider simple sentences that describe a state. He is a man. His state is a man. He is not a man. His state is not a man. Is he a man? Is his state a man? As you can see in each of these sentences, we have the subject he and the state verb is. In affirmative sentences, we have he is. To form a negative sentence, we add not after the state verb is. And to form a question, we simply switch the subject and the state verb. Okay, so what about action verbs? It's all the same, just that we replace to be with to do. And we have he does jump. He does an action of jumping. He does not jump. He does not do an action of jumping. Does he jump? Does he do an action of jumping? Notice in these sentences we have does, not do. Why? Because the verb do ends in letter O. And for the third person of singular form, we add, in this case, es, right? Okay, why not just say he, she, it, does and use the infinitive forms of verbs as in this example? Because it's simply too long and sometimes it's getting simply annoying to continually use do in affirmative sentences. Hence, in English, do and does are omitted, giving their endings to all other verbs. Therefore, all verbs in the third person singular form have endings exclusively in affirmative sentences, emphasizing the present tense. Listen, does, z, dances, she dances. Understand me correctly, he does run. You can say and write it, but it becomes more of an affirmation. Like in a dialogue, does he really jump? He does jump. Okay, so why did I emphasize the present tense earlier? Because in the past tense in affirmative sentences, we need to add d, ed, or ied to verbs. So, if the verb ends in a vowel, we add d, as in create, create, created. If it ends in a consonant, we add ed, like walk, walked, visit, visited. If the stress falls on the last syllable, we double the consonant and simply add ed. In such words like stop, stop, stopped, admit, admit, admitted, plan, plan, planned. If it ends with y without a preceding vowel, we change the y to an I and add ed, like in the word carry, carry, carried. If there is a preceding vowel before y, we simply add ed, as in the word play, play, played. As in the examples with verbs in present simple tense, in past tense we can use the past form of the word do, which is did. So we have he did jump. He did an action of jumping in the past. I did not jump. I did not do an action of jumping in the past. Did we jump? Did we do an action of jumping in the past? As we can see, neither did nor the verb changes at all. But remember, we don't say did in affirmative sentences. So did simply conveys its ending to other verbs. Listen, did, jumped, he jumped, I jumped, we jumped. Okay, what about eat, ate, run, ran, put? What to do with them? And why I am not mentioning their third forms? First of all, there are about 200 such words, and memorizing patterns that form those words is just a waste of time, as only half of those 200 verbs are commonly used. So I think remembering them won't be difficult. The main thing here is to understand how to use them, and they should be used just like in the previous examples. So we have I did eat. I did an action of eating in the past. I did not eat. I did not do an action of eating in the past. Did I eat? Did I do an action of eating in the past? Again, let's remember that we don't say did in affirmative sentences. So, only in those sentences do we use the irregular form of the verbs. I did it become I ate. Since we are discussing verbs today and their forms, we should reinforce their usage with examples in simple tenses of English language, namely in present, past, and future simple tenses. And here one can get a little confused as they differ only in the time when the subject was, is, or will be in a certain state, or performed, performs, or will perform a certain action. We will cover all of this a bit later, but today let's talk about simple tenses. Present simple, this is the tense in English language that we use to express feelings and preferences, as well as a state or an action that occurs with a certain frequency, meaning a subject is in a particular state or performs an action with certain frequency. For example, always, sometimes, never, etc. For example, I am happy, feeling. We have the expression of a state, specifically happiness, happy. So we use the verb to be in the form of am for I. I'm not happy. Here we have a negation, right? That's why we add particle not after am. Am I happy? Here we have a question. So we switch the subject and verb's positions. He wakes up at 7 a.m. Here we have frequency. Wakes up, like always or usually or whatever. It's a declarative sentence with the third person of singular form, performing an action, waking up, right? So we omit does, and for the verb wake, we add as because it ends with the vowel letter. He does not wake up at 7 a.m. Here we have a negation, right? So we have does and we add particle not for the negation. The word wake remains unchanged. Does he wake up at 7 a.m.? Here we have a question. So we keep does and switch the subject and the verb positions. The verb wake remains unchanged. Past simple. This tense in English reflects a completed state or action in the past, meaning subject was in a particular state or performed an action in the past. For example, he was young. State in the past. Here we have a state young, so we use the verb to be in its past form, was. He was not young. Here we have a negation, that's why we add particle not after the verb was. Was he young? Here we have a question, so we switch a subject and verb's positions. I walked to the store. Here we have an action, to walk, in the past, in a declarative sentence. so we omit do in its past form, did. And for the verb walk, we add ed because it ends with the consonant letter. I didn't walk to the store. Here we have a negation, right? A negative sentence. So we keep do in its past form, did, and add the word not for negation after it. Did I walk to the store? Here we have a question, so we keep do in its past form, did, and switch the subject and verbs positions. The same applies to irregular verbs. I ate an apple. I didn't eat an apple. Did I eat an apple? Future simple. We use this tense to express a state or an action that the subject will do in the future. This is the simplest tense grammatically, as we use will for both expressing a state and an action without changing the verb at all. He will go to the office. He will not go to the office. Will he go to the office? However, when talking about a state, will should be between the subject and the verb to be, which don't have any other forms in the future. So, we will be successful. It will not be big. Will I be a doctor? Before concluding, I want to note about the verb to do. It can also be the main verb in a sentence, and here are few examples. I do sports on weekends. I do not do sports on weekends. Do I do sports on weekends? Guys, please don't forget about what we've learned today about the verbs, and remember, consistency beats talent, which literally means that regular practice, even if it feels slow and challenging, ultimately leads to greater proficiency and success in learning English. See you soon and wish you luck.